So have you stretched and stretched and stretched, but that shoulder pain still keeps them coming back? Well, you're missing one key component, and I'm going to tell you what that is in this video. What's up, friends? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Cam. In today's episode, we're going to go over persistent shoulder pain. So why is this happening? You've gone through your stretches, you've done all your exercises, you've gone for massage therapy, you've been gunning the crap out of your shoulder, but yet that pain still keeps coming back and nagging you over and over again. Well, first of all, I want to let you know that you're not alone, because I've been dealing with this before. I've had a nagging shoulder pain that's been bugging me for 20 years, yet it's still manageable. I'm still playing my sports and I'm getting through it because of this one secret. So the issue here is that a lot of people focus on mobility, which is not a bad thing. I mean, you need that mobility in order to use your shoulder. If you can't reach, what's the point of doing any kind of exercise on top of that or going to play your sport? So you need that mobility. And so people are focusing on stretching and range of motion and passive exercises to really get those shoulders moving. And again, like I said, that's not a bad thing. And while this is an important portion of your rehab, it's only half of the equation when it comes to a full rehabilitation of your shoulder, or maybe even a third of it. So you're asking now, what's missing from my rehab program? Well, before we get into that, I want to go over the anatomy with me, and this is what I do with my patients in clinic. Is I want to make sure you guys understand what's happening at the shoulder and why your pain or discomfort is happening. And the first step is to understand what's happening at the shoulder, so understanding your anatomy of the shoulder. Now, you might have seen anatomy photos in Grey's Anatomy or online on Instagram, and people go over all these kind of crazy exercises. Now, it might seem that the shoulder is very complex, which it is. I mean, there's so many muscles, there are so many bones and joints and ligaments and tissue that attach to the area, and then on top of that you have all the different nerves that control each of the different muscles. But complex doesn't necessarily have to mean complicated. And I actually stole that phrase from Adam Meekins. If you haven't followed him before, check him out on Instagram and on other socials. He's a sports physio, I think it is. So check him out. He's a super cool, controversial guy, which I love. But yeah, I stole that phrase from him. So complex does not mean complicated. So to start off with, the shoulder is a ball and socket joint, and there are different types of joints in the body, but you might have heard of that term ball and socket joint. So imagine a golf ball sitting on a golf tee. Now, my hands don't do it justice, but imagine the golf ball, the size of the golf ball and the size of the golf tee. And although it's not maybe that extreme, it is similar to that in terms of how the shoulder joint ball and socket works. So the ball is much, much bigger compared to the socket that it sits into. And why this is because it promotes and or allows a lot more mobility around the shoulder. So you think about the amount of mobility around the shoulder, that 360 degrees, up, down, towards the sides, and around in different circular motions. Compare that to other joints in our body, like our ankle or our knees, or even at our fingers and our wrists. Even though those have a lot of mobility, the ball and socket of the shoulder provides that much more mobility. But with extra mobility comes a sacrifice, and that sacrifice here is stability. And what I mean by that is that the shoulder is inherently unstable compared to other joints. So you have a higher chance of dislocating or subluxing the shoulder joint, because that congruency between the joint ball and socket is not there, so it's not hugging as tightly as other joints would be, and as a result you have a higher chance of separating that shoulder. But have no fear. The reason why we shouldn't be fearful of this, because we have a lot of structure to help that stability, and part of that is the ligamentous tissue, which we think about the ligaments that surround the shoulder, the capsule, so all these passive structures that help to hug the shoulder joint together. But on top of that, we also have the active structures, so the muscles, which include like the chest muscles, the rotator cuff, the traps, the lats, all the muscles that surround the shoulder joint help to kind of promote that active stability around the shoulder. So why is it important to understand the structures around the shoulder? Well, because you have to think about what we're doing when we're doing our exercises. So when we're working on mobility, whether our stretches, our range of motion, so our pendulums, our circles, our wall circles, our pulleys, we're getting some movement through that tissue. So we're getting some stretching, we're getting some joint mobility, we're getting some kind of joint mobilizations as we're doing that. So it's beneficial in helping making sure that the tissue that surrounds the joint, so the capsule, the ligaments, the muscle muscles don't become too contracted. And basically contracted just means that the muscle becomes super tight and difficult to kind of stretch out. And that in itself is a thing that we would have to worry about later on. So of course, we want to make sure that we have good mobility through the shoulder. Now, this is especially true in the beginning of the rehab process. Usually what I would suggest is really focus on mobility during the first couple of weeks of your rehab, especially when things are too flared up or injured. For example, if I had a fall or some kind of strain of the shoulder, or if I had a weightlifting injury where everything is really sore and uncomfortable, I would be working purely, or mostly, I wouldn't say purely, mostly on mobility exercises, because this is what I can do in a pain-free range of motion and really just promote that movement through that tissue. Now, here within lies the problem is that when people focus on mobility throughout, so I'm talking about not just the first week or two, but weeks and months and maybe even years after your injury, and all you're doing is stretching and maybe doing some mobilizations, but really just stretching, massage gunning, and foam rolling, which again, like I said before, it does provide that kind of short-term benefit, but all you're doing in fact is just kind of getting that tissue to loosen up, and when you get back to your day-to-day activities, it's just going to get back and fall back into place where it was before. So that tight chest muscle, that tight trap muscle is going to get tight again because you're doing the same things over and over again. You're just stretching it out and retightening it back up. So essentially you're just going in this vicious cycle of kind of loosening things up. It feels good, tightening it back up because you're doing the same things day to day, and that's why your shoulder's not getting better, is because all you're doing is focusing on mobility and stretching. So surprise, surprise, like I said, we had to understand the anatomy. So what else is around that shoulder? So again, we have to focus on the muscles around the shoulder. And what do muscles do? The muscles help with controlling movement. They help with protecting the joints. They help with protecting the ligaments. When I say protecting, well, you have to think about the muscles as your shock absorbers of the joints. So same thing goes for the quads and the knees. Hips with your glutes. So the shoulder muscles work as shock absorbers. So you think about, okay, a car with the suspension. And again, I'm not a mechanic, so I don't know exactly how these things work, but what I'm guessing is the better your suspension, the less impact through the axle or whatever the wheel. And so same thing goes with your shoulder. The better the strength of the shoulder muscles, the less wear and tear on your shoulder joints, your ligaments, and other passive structures. So it's important to not only get those muscles going, but it's also important to get those to help you to protect it from future injury. So by this point, you're probably thinking, well, I've been doing my bench press. I'm pressing my 225, my 315. I'm overhead pressing, military pressing like 2 plates right now. Why is it still not getting any better? Well, now this is the issue, is because you're focusing on the strength and power muscles. So I like to break down muscles into 2 different groups. Well, not just me, but I guess that's how physiologically we work. But group number 1, we've got our power and strength and explosive muscles. So we think about our pec, our chest muscles, so bench press muscles, our lats, our deltoids. All these are fast twitch muscles that help with generating power. Now, while these muscles are important, it's not the sole muscle that you should be focusing on in the beginning. Let's think of it this way. If you are building a house, do you start with the roof and then work your way down into the foundation or into the cement and the concrete? Again, I'm not an architect or an engineer, so I may be way off with this. But think about it. If you're building from the roof down, structural integrity is going to be pretty shitty. And that's essentially what you're doing when you're working out these big muscles. So you're working on your lats and your chest and your pecs and your traps and all these big muscles that help to look great, but they don't actually help support your shoulder. So in order to build a proper house, you need to start from the ground or even into the ground upward. So you need to build a great strong foundation. And if we're coming back to our analogy here, the foundation is the rotator cuffs of the shoulder. So you may be thinking, okay, well, yeah, I'll just go work on some rotator cuff stuff and I'll just throw it into my my workout routine and get back into my chest and bench press. Yeah, you could do that, but I mean, I would, as a physical therapist, suggest to you, my patient, to really focus and hone in on the building that strong foundation and really focus on working on these muscles for 2, 3, 4 weeks, months before you even work on getting stronger and bigger in the gym. Because again, if you have a really poor foundation, it's going to be easily a house of cards that falls down and collapses on itself. And so you're asking, okay, fine, I trust you, Cam. What kind of exercise should I be doing to get my rotator cuffs stronger? Well, in that case, I'm gonna get you to check out this video over here because I'm gonna go over 5 different exercises for you to go over to strengthen and bulletproof your rotator cuffs. So check that video out over here and I'll catch you guys in the next one.